Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the moment of truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. Palm Beach County, Florida, Thursday, January 27th, 2022. Noah Galle is part of the reason why these live streaming video platforms like TikTok, Kick, etc. are seen as a cancer on American society. These websites have inspired and popularized a countless number of stupid memes and so-called challenges, such as the using a USB stick to steal Kia cars challenge, but it's become the go-to place for would-be influencers to post videos of themselves, putting the public at risk with videos of themselves driving down the highway as fast as they possibly can. Some chump named Jack Doherty crashed his sports car doing one of these live streaming high-speed driving things in the rain. Fortunately, nobody got hurt that time, but it goes to show these platform algorithms are meant to financially reward and hence incentivize young suburban sociopaths who don't care about their own lives or those of the people around them. So Noah Galle, the son of a wealthy Florida attorney, had some money and a cell phone, and he decided to try to get himself some quickie views by live streaming himself speeding down the highway at 151 miles per hour. He was telling his followers that whoever could guess correctly how fast he was going, he would cash app them $25. $25. That's it. Going at 151 miles per hour, he struck an SUV carrying 6 people. All of them died. And in the cruel irony that goes along with these types of auto accidents, the driver who killed these people walked away alive with no injuries. Anyone heard of any legislators, by the way, proposing legislation to punish this kind of thing? Intentionally endangering people's lives and now a mass murder 3 years ago, mind you, and yet these lawmakers aren't saying a word? They want to ban TikTok because they don't like some of the videos there. Meanwhile, you got these suburban psychos who are on the roads killing people, and they don't seem to be bothered about that at all. Now, of course, if these were black content creators doing this stuff, well, remember the phony racial hysteria Fox News invented over the so-called knockout game? But they're not so concerned about this. Gee, I wonder why. Now, reports are that paramedics treated this mass murderer Galle at the scene and that he had slurred speech and reeked of alcohol, but they claim that nothing was ever found in his system. Slurred speech and reeking of alcohol. But they claim they found nothing. Well, what that says to me is that the old I'm white and I say so kicked in, and they just declared they didn't find anything, regardless of if there was or not. And it wouldn't be the last time that the legal system bent over backwards to help this guy out. Galle would eventually be charged with 6 counts of vehicular homicide and looking at up to 15 years per count, which would have totaled 90 years in prison. But of course, these prosecutors have a color-coded system in place, and this creep had the complexion for the protection. Even facing charges for killing 6 people, his white privilege guaranteed that he would be treated as if this was jaywalking and not a mass murder, so the judge automatically gave him a mere $300,000 bail. Given that his father is a wealthy local attorney, he very easily paid that amount and was back out on the loose. Now, the prosecutor at that time, a guy named Ehrenberg, issued a statement saying, quote, "We will seek justice by vigorously prosecuting this case." I want you to remember that. This Ehrenberg character said that he would vigorously prosecute this case. That means he fully intended to take it to trial, because a plea deal is not prosecuting a case. A courtroom trial is. But this was 3 years ago, mind you, and nothing had come of this mass murder in that period up until recently, and you could tell the good old boys in Florida were thinking that they would just wait this one out, let this case fade from the headlines, and then they could do very quietly what they always do. Offer this mass murderer a sweetheart plea deal where they lower or eliminate virtually all the charges and just give him a slap on the wrist. That's the reason why this month it was quietly announced that prosecutors had offered Galle a plea deal where he would serve only 12 years for having intentionally engaged in behavior that led to 6 deaths. So he only serves 2 years per murder. But as we all know, white privilege being what it is, he'll be up for parole in only a few years, which was the entire point of pulling this maneuver. But rather than fly under the radar, this outrage was noticed, and now it's in the headlines and the prosecutors are on the hot seat. Now remember how I mentioned a minute ago that back in 2022 when this mass murder took place, the state's attorney, Dave Ehrenberg, said that he would vigorously prosecute this case? Well, the very next year, Ehrenberg announced that he wasn't going to run for re-election, so he would be leaving office at the end of 2024. That's important because this plea deal for Galle was done in a hurry. In fact, it was so rushed that even the judge on the case was shocked and asked the prosecutors why they had slapped this plea deal together so quickly. The state's attorney representative who was present said, "The new administration starts tomorrow." When confronted by reporters to explain what that meant, the prosecutor said, "This is under the Dave Ehrenberg administration. I'm not going to comment past that because it's not really appropriate." Even the judge who signed off on this knew that it wasn't right. But this was the entire point, to rush this crooked plea deal through before anyone could do anything to stop it. This mass murder happened back in January of 2022, nearly 3 years ago. They weren't in a rush to do anything about it until now. And what do we hear? It's because this is the Ehrenberg administration. We got to hurry up and do it now while this guy is in office. Because his successor, well, that person may not necessarily want to give this guy a slap on the wrist. So we got to go ahead and do it now while we still have the authority to. That meant that this crook Ehrenberg was planning to do this from the very beginning. He never had any intention of prosecuting this case. This would have been a guaranteed conviction, and he knew that. So this was about denying justice, not ensuring it. Instead of the 90 years that Galle was supposed to get, he only got 12 years, plus he's been told that he has to post a video to social media, at least 1 minute in length, sharing his story and advocating for the importance of safe driving. I'm not making that up. That's what the judge said the sentence should be. He needs to make a 1-minute video and post it online. Never mind the fact that the entire reason that this mass murder happened was because this creep was posting videos online. And here they are telling him go ahead and post a few more. 6 people were killed by a privileged punk whose family is politically connected, and the prosecutors pulled this underhanded maneuver to protect him from the sentence he deserved, which is what he would have gotten if this had gone before a jury. And even this crooked prosecutor knew it. Quote, "No amount of prison time will bring the victims back to their families. We feel this is an appropriate resolution. This case is a tragedy." A tragedy, he says? Sure can't tell by the way they handled it. Is this the prosecutor who put out this statement or the killer's defense team? Because that's what they're talking about. Is this what the prosecutor says when prosecuting a murder case? Do they say, well, no amount of prison time will bring the victims back, so we feel that a slap on the wrist sentence is appropriate. This is the appropriate resolution. You know, using that line about no amount of prison time can bring the victims back, you can justify not prosecuting anything. When's the last time or any time that they've done that for a black defendant who killed a white person? I'll wait. This isn't about the law. This is about what it always is. Criminals in these prosecutors' offices who decide that justice is whatever they want to see happen. Laws be damned. There's a color-coded system of injustice in place in America, where if you're the right skin color, you can record yourself killing 6 people live on air, and the prosecutors will violate their oath of office, ignore the law, and defy the public just to make sure you get off. And if you're black, they'll violate their oath of office, ignore the law, and defy the public just to put a false case on you. This is about race and nothing else. By the way, on a side note, you remember how the white media was going into phony hysterics about the recalling of Judge Aaron Persky? He was the crook on the bench who decided that Brock Turner shouldn't go to prison for raping a woman. The white media was making all sorts of phony hysterics about, oh my God, judges are going to be terrified now to give defendants, black defendants by the way, a lighter sentence. They'll be terrified to give them anything less than the max because of this. This is going to terrify the judges. And I told you we were going to wait years to see if that ever happened, and it didn't, because it never would from the very beginning. What the white media was really concerned about was that the judges would feel discouraged from putting their thumb on the scales and making sure that genetic immunity from law continued. That was the principle they actually wanted to preserve. Now, something else that comes to mind is that as the black media, these racist websites like Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, etc., they attack our channels, disrupt our uploading videos, they remove channels simply because we tell the truth about race in America. Meanwhile, you have these creeps committing crimes, endangering people, and even committing mass killings, and these same websites are fine with it. This is what their so-called community guidelines really mean. This also happened in Florida, Ron DeSantis' Florida. You know, the same Florida where Ron DeSantis and that stupid sheriff who's always clout chasing, you know the one, he looks like Bob Newhart with Down syndrome. These clowns are always talking about being tough on crime and law and order and other empty talking points. Well, here you have someone who killed 6 people. He gets a slap on the wrist, and none of them is talking about passing new legislation to give mandatory prison time to these criminals who endanger lives just to get some views online, murdering people just for online clicks. And the prosecutor was the one who put this sweetheart plea deal together, and when confronted about it, he said that the killer accepted responsibility, and because of his age, he should get a lighter sentence. Life in prison was too harsh a sentence for him. Well, the people that he murdered got a death sentence, but Ron DeSantis doesn't care. Remember, he's removed prosecutors from office for being Democrats, and he said they're not tough enough on crime. I feel as if they're not going to be upholding the law, so I'm going to remove them before they're even in office. I don't want them there. Now you got prosecutors allowing mass murderers to get a slap on the wrist, making inappropriate plea deals, and DeSantis isn't concerned at all. Gee, I wonder why. Well, that's the white right and the conservative movement for you. They're offended by everything, but ashamed of nothing. And the parents of this Galle character, they ought to be charged too. He was doing this from their home. They enabled and protected him during this deadly behavior that he was engaged in until he inevitably killed people. We hear about parents needing to be held accountable for their children's criminal behavior when these parents knew about it and should have stopped it. But apparently they haven't had a case where there's some black parents who they could throw charges at. So you could see that what they did with Ethan Crumbley, they're looking at that and going, well, we don't want that to become habit forming. If we're going to be throwing parents in jail for the offenses of their children, they gotta be the right color. And I guess that's why these lawmakers aren't passing laws to enact or intensify any of these parental responsibility laws that people have been demanding. And we just keep seeing this happen over and over again. The affluenza teen, Ethan Couch, he killed 4 people in a drunk driving crash. He fled the country, was extradited back, and only served a few years in prison. He killed 4 white people, by the way. But white supremacy decided long ago that maintaining its system of racial privileges is far more important than maintaining and preserving their own lives. If you start consistently punishing those who exercise racial privilege to a lethal degree, then before long you have to start punishing those who do it to a harmful degree. And then those who do it to an egregious degree, and before you know it, you'll have a system of equal justice under the law. The very thing that white supremacy was created to prevent. And of course you have Brock Turner, who was convicted of raping a woman. The judge said that he was too young and precious to go to prison. Drew Clinton went and did the same thing. He asked for a bench trial, and the judge intentionally, deliberately stood up in court and said that he knew that this guy was guilty of rape, but he was going to ignore the law and give him no time at all because he didn't want to mess up his life. And that judge was so contemptuous of the law and common decency, he didn't even bother to spare a word of sympathy for the woman who this creep Clinton raped. We see these judges showing the real reason that they're on the bench, to make sure that racial immunity from the law is maintained. That's their job. That's why they're there. And yes, Galle's father is a prominent attorney, but so what? Those animals who tried to kill that FedEx driver, the judge illegally threw out the charges against him. And those guys don't know anybody. They're not connected. They're not wealthy. See, it's not about class. It's about race. If you're the right skin color, then you'll get a pass, even for murder. Those who administrate the laws will boldly and brazenly defy them, like these judges do, in order to make sure the system they all depend on is not threatened. This is about race. And I don't care what butthurt, knuckle-dragging neo-Neanderthal doesn't like that we're saying it. This is white privilege at work. And so long as that's the case, there can be no justice. We all know the only reason this keeps happening. You have never seen a black man who's accused of harming 1 person, much less killing 6 people, and then he gets 12 years. When have you seen any judge who, after a black man has been convicted of a crime, will boldly stand up in court and say, I admit I realize he's guilty, but I don't want to ruin his life, even though he raped someone, or killed 4 people, or 6. Yes, we can be outraged because this is outrageous. The Ethan Couches and the Noah Galles commit their murders for the same reason that these white authorities refuse to do anything about these school mass shootings, because of who it would require them to go after. Preserving the benefit of skin color privilege is the priority. It's certainly more important than preserving the lives of their own children. So of course they won't care about random people on the highways either, especially if a few of those killed happen to be black. As far as they're concerned, that's a good thing. The problem isn't that you got a bunch of privileged punks running around intentionally ignoring the speed limit. The problem is that these authorities are doing everything in their power to make sure that when it comes to racial privilege, there are no limits. As I've been saying for years now, Until these crooked prosecutors and these crooked judges are actually held to account and punished, then the public is going to continue to see these criminals getting away with murder. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Antonio Daniels, Kareem Lawless, Get Right, Norma Anthony, and Leonard Cottingham. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.